All right. As we do that step with the flowers, we are only going to be working with oil pastel or crayon of your choice. You get to choose what flowers you want. I'm only going to do one for time's sake, but I'm going to teach you how to put shadows and stuff in the grass. And this is actually going to take me a minute, so if you're still working on something else, that is okay. I'm going to start with my light color first, so I can remain or keep that sort of intensity of this brightness here in my oil pastel. And for shadow, you can add a darker green. And I kind of just feathered this in at different areas. You get to decide what you want for your base color for the bottom part of your grass, because naturally the ground is not white. Thankfully so. If that was the case, my house would be a mess because I spill food all the time. All right. When you have your base, if you want to have kind of like a blend of dark and light green, you can do dark green on the bottom and then use your light green as a blender to draw on top, and that will give you the effect that you want. So here's your grass. I myself am a huge fan of daisies, so I'm going to put a daisy in there. You can decide if you want a flower like a rose or a tulip. Yeah, tulip sounds good. I'm probably just going to put a daisy. I am going to, where's my brown? Now, as you're doing this, as you're coloring, you want to make sure, if you don't want any of that blue to peep through your flower, make sure that whatever you draw or whatever you're coloring in, there's no white peeping through. You don't want any of your paper peeping through here, because if you do, your watercolor will stick to that. I'm just going to stick with the yellow theme here. So just make sure that you color it really well. Take your time. The rest is super simple. It's literally a wash in the background. Now, a wash is spreading a thin layer of water on the surface of your paper, and then you go over it with a thin layer of color. It's a watered down version of paint. That's why it's called a wash. You're literally washing out the paint, cleaning out some of that vibrant color so you can kind of get like a faded technique. If you want to have a gradient effect, like let's say you have dark, medium, light in the background, then you're going to use more paint down here than water. But for simplicity's sake, I am going to stick with a simple wash. I'm going to put water down. Dab, 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 dab. And then blue. See how that's washed out? See how it's not sticking to my oil pastel? That, my friend, is called a wax resist. This technique works with crayon, it works with oil pastel, as long as you have oil or wax, your paint will not stick to that because it does not agree with water. And I had us do the oil pastel to allow us to move through our last part of this piece quickly and efficiently at home. It's literally just a layer of water and a layer of paint. And you continue this up all the way to the top of your paper. So, the key to a wash is using a thin layer of water and some dots of color. And you can intensify that color by adding more dots of color if you choose to do so. Now for the sky, we are going to create a thin blue all the way around. Let's gather this extra paint. See how it's pooling right here? Let's gather it and swipe it all the way to the edge of your paper. So that way you don't have any weird, awkward pools of paint or color gathering on your paper and taken away from the beautiful smoothness of your wash's finish, so to speak. And as you can see, your grass is not mixing with your oil pastel. That's specifically because grass that we have drawn is out of oil, and oil does not mix well with water. So just be very mindful and careful as you move around these wings and the body of your bee, just to ensure that you aren't dragging black or yellow into your sky. Now I have a gradient effect here, and when I say gradient, I mean that the bottom of my sky is darker than the top. So as I keep moving up my composition, my color is going to thin out. I'm going to add more water and less paint. I did this mostly with, I added this color in mostly with a dry brush right near this honeycomb because I don't want to risk getting that lovely honeycomb of mine all wet and nasty. Because as I move up, I'm using more water. I'm risking it bleeding into these shapes, so I got to be super careful. It's part of the reason why I did not draw black for my antennae yet. Because I don't want to have to bother with painting around it like I am with this bee body. But unfortunately, my yellow I wanted to maintain. See, it's already starting to bleed in there. I wanted to maintain a bright, vibrant color for my bee's body. So I have that bright color, but I'm doing my darndest to try to not have that blue eliminate that color. Let's take that blob. Once my paper dries, I will go in with black and paint over these areas for my antennae. But right now, I am specifically focusing on spreading my wash evenly across the paper. And quite frankly, I might even go in and use oil pastel to color this flower so I don't risk dragging blue into the color of other areas. So let's just do that. We're just going to take, we might have to switch out to a smaller brush up here. Scary. Yeah, I'm gonna I know my oil pastel, my yellow oil pastel is here, but quite frankly, yellow seems to collect some of the watercolor for some reason. I don't know. The watercolor just dulls it for some reason. Don't ask me why. I don't know the science behind it. Maybe it's because the yellow oil pastel is a weaker color. Don't know. But what I do know is in order to maintain the brightness of my yellow oil pastel, I'm just not going to mess with it. Normally I'd switch out to another brush, but I'm feeling lazy and I don't want to clean that brush. I only want to clean the brush I'm currently using. So bear with me here as I practice my lazy maneuverage around this crown. Okay, so now I'm going to wait until this is dry, and then I will come back and paint in my antennae and my flower with, well, I could choose oil pastel for the antennae too if I really wanted to, but we'll see. Okay. So my paint has dried, and while my paint dried, I decided to put my watercolor stuff away. So I'm just simply going to draw this in using oil pastel. It'll also encourage me to get those accurate, fine lines without it being too much of a problem. Let's see. I think I'm going to do an orange flower. With a white center, and it will probably have a little bit of orange to it, and that is okay. That is something that I was anticipating. I just really didn't want to have to deal with the fine tuning of having to paint around these colors, so I figured I would just put in oil pastel and just call it good. Let's darken up that green. I'm not sure if I like that. There we go. And that, my friend, is how to use mixed media to create a watercolor honeybee.